I'm Jennifer Brown, and on behalf of the Center for Literary Arts at Frostburg State University, I'd like to welcome you to the 15th Annual Western Maryland Independent Literature Festival, this year online. But especially I would like to welcome you to this reading by authors who have been published in this most recent edition of Kestrel, the literary magazine. But before we begin, I'd like to thank the sponsors who make our work possible. That includes the Allegheny Arts Council, the City of Frostburg, Savage Mountain Punk Arts, and several offices at Frostburg State University, including the Office of the President, the Office of the Dean of the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, and the Department of English and Foreign Languages and Literature. And now I'll turn this over to the ever lovely Elizabeth Savage, who's been with us many times in Frostburg and whom I miss being in the same room with. But please, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Jen, and for organizing this. I know even though it's virtual, it's still a lot of cat rustling, and I really appreciate it. And thank you to our readers today, 2 from Kestrel 41 and 2 from Kestrel 44. We have Kevin Chesser, Robert Woodland, Susan Manchin, and Bonnie Proudfoot. I'd like to plug the Kestrel celebration for issue 45, for issue 45, that will be in December the 10th and 11th. Please see the Kestrel website for more information. And I'd also like to thank Fairmont State University, the College of Liberal Arts, and the Department of Humanities for their ongoing support of Kestrel. We couldn't have our journal without such great colleagues. Our first reader today will be Kevin Chesser. He is a writer and musician living in Thomas, West Virginia, and has a beautiful green, breezy backdrop. His work has appeared in Hobart, The Talking Book, Dr. Doctor, and elsewhere, and you can find him on the web at kchesser.com. Thank you, Kevin, for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. I live in Thomas, but I'm Zooming to you today from my parents' house in Southern Maryland. So that's why we have this lovely backdrop. I live in an apartment in Thomas. So yeah, I'm gonna read a couple of older poems and a couple of newer poems. This first one is called The Light of Day. I'm pretty tough, but not as tough as my sister. One time, I saw her take 4 guys at once to their respective therapist appointments. The book of our lives is a special book because it's the only one that gets heavier as you tear out the pages, she said to me. We had a little orchard we'd like to run through in our minds. Full solar eclipses always make my nose bleed, is something else she said, then demonstrated. Back then, I wasn't tough enough to take anyone at their word. Thanks. I don't really know what to do with like the silence in between. Yeah. I also didn't bother to print anything. I just have everything on my phone, which adds another level of, taking all the physicality out of a process that really isn't all that physical to begin with. Okay, this is called Land of Enchantment. The apathy of an egg just sitting there, frying. A knock on the door. It's the landlord. He's got a few problems, some of which are mine, and he's got a few dollars, some of which are mine. He says a change is coming. The winds of change, he says. What the hell is he talking about? I do miss the desert where you can fry an egg on the sidewalk, so it said. And not only that, I was touched for a long spell in my special place by a space alien one night in Cloudcroft, New Mexico. I wrote you a letter about it, as yet unsent. You don't need me to tell you that love is always just around the corner in Cloudcroft, New Mexico, or that the sky goes on in turquoise foam forever in the direction of the life you make without me. Thanks. Thank you very much. Okay, this is called Plato's Man Cave. What of all these men constructing and constructed by the things they see and seem in their dreams? You couldn't bring them back if you tried. Then there's the other matter of the lost hikers and the other matter of the gangs of toughs. Okay, you say, what do you know about either? Steady, I say, here's what I know. The gangs of toughs never talk about themselves because anyone could be listening and the night is not safe. Lost hikers never stop talking about themselves or whatever, really. They follow their echoing voices, echoing until they arrive at lost. It's the people with the least trouble to start with who are always out looking for more. That's why I've never found any occupation more suited to me than being a fake doctor. Down the line, I fear we will discover that many of our lost hikers will have done their losing in the man caves of America. Okay, you say, what do you know about the man caves of America? Well, you were hiking for a long time until you hiked into a dream. It is a dream to me, but my man cave to you. That's what makes this so difficult. This is a very, very short set that I have here. This poem was just published in Hello America stereo cassette, which was a publication that started off mostly just soliciting and publishing work from authors who were living in rural areas. And the guy has since sort of changed formats so that now it's actually mostly an audio format, taking submissions from, broader demographics. But it's really cool. So it's a poetry and fiction press that has a Bandcamp, and he's actually been working on putting out cassette releases of authors' work on tape. So kind of a cool project, worth checking out, and maybe worth sending something to him if you like it. It's Hello America stereo cassette. It's on social media and all that. This is called Ancient Grains. Mom was there, way off in the distance. I was 5 years old, waist deep in the wild at heart suburban water. That water was air conditioned. I prayed a salamander back to life. This was Dad's birthday. I knew what to give him. He loved that salamander more than I ever could. With it resting in his hand, Dad became calm and ate so much bread. That house was air conditioned. But I kept thinking about going back out in the water. I'd have to wait until later, after Dad and the salamander were asleep. This left no small amount of time to kill. I stood and looked at myself in the mirror for a while. The buttery grains of my eyes started to run out of my face and onto the floor. Oh shit, I said out loud, waking up Dad and the salamander. My punishment was to stand at the window until morning. Not so bad. Saw the moon come up, saw Mom out there, way off in the distance, digging a hole for the whole earth. I have one more. My dad is actually sitting right there. My dad and my brother are sitting there. Okay, this is my last one. This is a slightly older one. It is called By Our Infinite Powers Combined. The weather is a wall. The forest is a virtual reality cage. The endangered species list is a manifest. The diamond is an afterthought. The recessive gene is a double-tongued forefinger. The man sleeping on the street is a door. The burn unit is a seminar. The gut shot outlaw is a fine-tooth comb, forgiving landscape, arch-top guitar. The cluster of stink bugs is a brooch. The circus organ jig is a rebuttal to what made the land and the sea. The wart-encrusted blister is a blessing etched in marble. The aerosol can is a dull talon The dismal hollow is a perfect circle. The delayed flight is a note sung in an empty room. The figure of speech is a ghoul drinking from a hose. The doted upon sun is a ghost dragging chain. The season of floods and ice is an editor. The train carrying souls to hell is a tentative yes. The halftime show is a powdered wig on the wind. The retinal scanner is a dab of this and that. The decommissioned shopping mall is a cub traveling by moonlight. The glimmer of remorse is a spider more bitsy than itsy. The warrior burning his clothes is a result near you. The rolling thunder is an entire nation gone out for a smoke. The vanishing point is a chisel held to God's throat. The common denominator is a demonic commentator. The sip is a gulp. The clam is a clone. The rope is a rush. The need to be touched is a figure thin as Nosferatu. The family photo album is a stunning concept. The cult of lemmings is a laughing quartet. The first grade classroom is a digital monastery. The groveling groveler is a grown man, or me. The last person left on earth is a willing participant. Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin, and Kevin's dad. That was terrific. Our next reader is Robert Woodland. He was also published with Kevin in Kestrel 41. Robert is a writer from a small town in Virginia. His first book, Mothman Appalachia, was selected by Ray Armentrout, I have a funny story about her, as the winner of the 2021 Yale series of Younger Poets Prize, the oldest continuously awarded poetry prize in America, which I did not know. Mothman Appalachia will be available in April of 2022 from Yale University Press. And this book explores youth in Virginia and West Virginia through a number of lenses, including the persona of the Mothman, one of which was published in Kestrel, one of those poems, as well as a speaker losing a loved one to the opioid epidemic. Lynn splits his time between Rockford County, Virginia, and New York City, where he teaches in the undergraduate creative writing program at New York University. Welcome, Robert Woodland.
Thanks so much, Elizabeth. Really wish I could be in person, but I'm really glad that this is an event that's continuing on in the virtual space. So normally I'm coming in from Glasgow, Virginia, but today I'm here in an office in Times Square in New York. So it feels really good to read some poems about the Virginias. I'll start with a couple poems. I'll read 4 poems today. I'm gonna start with a couple poems that were first published in Kestrel 41. So here's one about my mother. The best shot in the house. According to my mother, fresh shell casings are warm with the sadness of separation. She was never specific about whose. The only thing she ever said about guns was where's the fun in point and pull. So I resolved to find it. For the same reasons I insisted on eating Baker's chocolate with a straight face. For the same reason, as a teenager, she smoked her way through the whole pack of punishment cigarettes, then coughing, asked my grandfather for another. This is how it came to pass that the first time my father took me shooting, I amused myself catching spent casings as they fell until my fingers blistered around the brass. Later, tending the burns, she said, I don't see the point and pull. There was no use talking back because it was understood that she was the best shot in the house. Just something, I was told, girls learn better in West Virginia. I never saw her fire a real gun. The only proof deposed by video games. With each click of the orange pistol, the duck hunt ducks would fall, and she would take another step back until she ran out of room or cord. She never played for long. It's just point and pull, and where's the fun in that? By then, she'd be against the wall, standing on the living room couch, cord so taut that when she dropped the toy weapon, it would spring from her hand like something hot with the disappointment of the sudden separation. And then this is the first poem in the Mothman series that is sort of the spine of my book that's coming out next year. And it was And it's the first one, I think the only one so far published. And so I'm kind of excited to see that it landed in Kestrel, where it is especially on point. So the Mothman pronounces Appalachia. I say it Appalachia because there's a latch in it, and everyone who hasn't lived here rushes in with the correction, Appalachia, they say, as if the latch has too much power, as if it needs to be dashed out like the O in God, as if they are afraid that fiddling with it might knock the lid open and out of these mine shafts climb monsters, those of us they want to leave buried under these hills. As if that hasn't already happened. What do you think strip mining is? What do you think strip mining did but ripped the lid off this whole damn place? How did you think I got out to begin with? I'm genuinely asking. No one ever asked us Mothmen. No one ever bothered to ask our names, our pronouns. And here they go misgendering moth people, those of us that climbed out of Hades so long ago we waved to Orpheus on his way in. As I climb back down to gently put Orpheus out of his impossible misery, I whisper like a warning. It's Appalachia. It rhymes with come back at ya the way Yeats rhymes with hates, not heats. Appalachia doesn't rhyme with euthanasia any more than Eurydice rhymes with cowardice. Say it with me, Appalachia, Appalachia. Close the latch, turn the lock. Like Yeats said about a poem, click it shut like a box. That's a fun poem to read, and when I read it, further up here in New York, like there's a whole chunk of the Appalachians where it's totally fine to say Appalachia, and I periodically have to just remind people that only the Mothman is correcting people. But I'm going to read two more. They're short, and they're from the new book. So this is 9th of 10 Elegies for Fire and Oxycodone. It's the penultimate poem in a series that about a dear friend of mine. That dumb joke in Talladega Nights, Will Ferrell's delusion of going up in flames. John C. Reilly wails as he runs across the racetrack. Please don't let the invisible fire hurt my friend. I laughed hard enough to soak out any flame. Imagine then my embarrassment at finding invisible fire is an actual problem in car racing. Fuel called methanol burns colorless, doesn't even smoke. All sorts of videos up on the internet, the Indy 500, pit crews writhing from unseeable flames. Turns out you can run around burning, nobody notices. Wave your arms, roll around, still no one believes you're on fire. I watched the DVD with your sister once, after your accident. That scene, the stop, drop, and roll, she threw up in her mouth, in a sudden way, as if a pipe inside her burst. Oh, her face as it dribbled down her chin. I snapped the disc like a communion cracker. When I picture your face, I see your stippled freckles giving way to the fractal coastline of your burns. A topographic map, some far-off country we could never afford to visit. Imagine you there, making the local dishes, burnt tinfoil, shoplifted shoelaces, Narcan left like cookies for Santa, roses in little glass tubes. And then this will be the last poem I'll read. It's short and it's the opening poem to the collection. The Mothman Gets High. Yes, there is a point at which any person gets tired of knowledge. You could call this a threshold, or you could call this the point at which a person gets tired of knowledge. I'll tell you this, I've never felt further from another than when standing beside them, trying to point out a star. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I really look forward to your book. Our next reader is Susan Manchin. She's published in Kestrel 44. She is an MFA candidate at Bennington College, where she's the recipient of the Mardah Chami Poetry Scholarship. Her work has appeared or is forthcoming in Poems from the Lockdown by Willowdown Books, or in Kestrel, Eclipse Lit, and Slab. Manchin's writing has been chosen as the third place winner in the 2021 Tucson Festival of Books Literary Awards Writing Competition. Congratulations on that. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. I think I'm going to start with a poem that I've written recently for school. And a lot of these poems will be poems that I submitted for school. And this one I wasn't so sure about, and I sent it in my last packet, and it was one that I was questioning. And then the teacher responded that she didn't need to change anything about it. And I thought, wow, because usually, they come back with all these comments. And I'm like, okay. It's called First Star I See Tonight. It's 3:54 in the morning. I am barely standing before the bathroom sink, hands lathered up with lavender soap. The basic beige room glows toasted coconut macaroon. I turn to the right and look out the window for the celestial source of this wizardly upgrade. It's true, I haven't starlight star-brighted since 5 clicks of an abacus ago, each worn wooden bead representing 10 years. But there's no turning back to bed without presenting a request to the single spark wheel upstaging the night's dark dramatics. Beamish and obvious in its need to be seen and acknowledged, I oblige. Express my awe at such a wondrous display. Whisper my skittish wish. No, I won't divulge it. I didn't get this far by neglecting the child-rich rules of the stars. The next one is about my horse. It's a hard read for me, but I'll try to get through it. It's called Naborza, the Heavens. A tree fell, put down without consent, wrangled to the ground by high winds and a racking rain. It blocked the bike trail as it straddled the black puddle, where I stand reflecting back on my gray Arabian, who once was steamy with sweat and breath, had nostrils that flared from picking up pace, and a tail that lifted like a kite at the end of its string. He would have balked at this body of water, a thing we can sink into. How I would have to nudge him to take the jump. I'd push with legs and hips, slide my folded hands forward, and let him have his head. I lift my seat from the saddle and drop my weight into the stirrups. I would become one with this dangerous, thunderous wonder. But to claim this honor, you need to know not to pull on the reins, so not to jam the bit into the tender tissue of tongue. You need to keep a steady leg in a good seat and know how to lead, but more importantly, know how to follow. It is this that translates to trust. Horses know what this is and is not. He'd take the jump because my body spoke to his in a language we both practiced. Or maybe he just wanted to fly, so to defy gravity and carry our bulk up and over the falling things of the earth and become more a buoyant thing of the heavens. I jerk my bike up and over the earthly hurdle, and the sharp spikes of my pedal prick my skin. There is no trust in inanimate objects gripped with oblivious hands. I roll my back tire over the collapsed tree and remount my ride. I track my horse, which departed ahead of me, galloped and galloped with such speed, his hooves shattered the parched russets and dark scarlets into a mosaic wake, shattered like broken glass our horse's hip, labeled lost cause, put down before the call. I push with legs and hips, lift my seat from the saddle and drop my weight into the pedals, but he still vanished, beyond the bend, leaving behind dashes of light that dapple the leaf-stricken way. So that's about my horse that I lost a while ago. The next poem is a newer poem, and this just came to me because I ran to a cafe because I had no air conditioning in the house. It was broken and it was super hot. And I was like, I have to get out of here. And plus I had workers in my house and they were being very loud and I was trying to write, you know how that is. So I just booked it. It's called the Sanctuary Cafe. The guys are hot and humid and home. The two of them wrestling with dishwashers and light fixtures. They're brutal with grunts and stories of past athletic glories. But it's not their broken air conditioning or their lips manic with mythomania that drove me here. It's this, the toasted homespun muffin, thick with fresh carved country ham and free-range egg, tucked under a cover of white cheddar and cave-aged Gruyere, crisping thin and lacy on the extended edges, plated and ready for the sweet red berry jelly and house fiery mustard, set side by side in two pleated cardboard cups, like two Catholic schoolgirls in pleated skirts, rolled up, pledging allegiance to the sweet and the fiery. That had a little bit weird leap in it. I don't know where it came from, except I went to Catholic school, so maybe that's it. This next one I wrote because I would see on the news that people would die, and if they were over the age of 60, they would just be like, natural causes. And I'm like, wait a minute, what are these natural causes? I mean, just because you're over 60 doesn't mean you're just dropping from natural causes. And so I looked into it, and NPR News, this is the epigraph of the poem. It's called Natural Causes. Many jurisdictions stopped doing autopsies on people who died over the age of 60, unless it was obvious that a violent death occurred. No lumps, bumps, or bruises is all it takes to be slid into a grave without raising suspicions or questions. For a pen, a clipboard, and a scalpel are nowhere to be found in the vicinity of a dead body of a certain age. As if the graying of hair and the slacking of skin determine whether these three items will be lifted by a gloved hand. Something to consider when your spouse, out of the blue, brews the coffee, slides your favorite cup across the counter, and whispers, "Drink up." The next one is also a recent poem. It's called Duality, and it's just looking at the yin and yang of life and how you have to, you're grateful for one aspect of life, but it's all connected, even to parts that are either scary or less desirous. It's duality. The epigraph, the soul's bliss and suffering are bound together, by Jane Kenyon. I can only guide my daughter's eyes to the Pacific, can't separate the foil flicker of water from the surface chop. And there's no kicking up the delicate drape of ivory froth, skirting lace-like across the shoreline, without what came before it, the dangerous, thunderous breaker. I can't isolate the one, leaving only the other, can't yank the yin from the yang, for it's this contradiction that elevates the worth, the wonder, and the beholder. Do we not come to treasure the washed up, sand-scratched, gauzy green sea glass because we know of its antonym, the once broken, sharp shard that could cut us? Let's see. I will read this one. Okay. This is a poem I wrote because I was thinking back on how my dad broke the news of my mother's death. And he just was a man of very few words. So it was in the elevator in the hospital. Between floors in a city hospital. 10th floor. Father's words ricocheted off the steel interior. Your mother will not be coming home. Not hit like bullet, ambushed our footing, doors shook shut. What's 5 take away 1, 4 left, pressed against plummeting walls, nowhere to look but down, no one fired another word. Ground floor, doors pulled apart, back to where we had started, when our world still held her, and tiny hands held pink carnations tucked in tight between fidgety fingers. Hope, a thing still fragrant, went on the way up, suspended between life and death, between the two extremes of knowing and not, of up, of open and up, and shut and plummet. And I can finish with, I probably should read the Kestrel, issue 44. I am going to read King Street. It's a list poem. You are my King Street, the mist as it lifts from the rain's train. You are the gallery we shelter in from the sun. Yet you are not the art mounted to its crisp white walls, the painting, girl with a cup of tea, for she is me. But you are the thick plaster to which she affixes herself, and the warm light she bathes in. You are the coffee I sip in a small dark room rich with wood panels, paintings of breeches and boots, hunters and hounds, and the unfortunate fox looking back over her tail. I am the unfortunate fox. I know the injustice. You are the justice. But I am also the swizzle stick wrapped in raw candy, the answer to your earthiness as I stir. You are the bar, Amen Street, the fiery glow on cobblestone roads, hoofbeats and rickshaws. I am the only female driver of rickshaws. You are the hand on my back, catch and release. You are also the mojito, the lime, the rum, and the ice. I am the muddled mint and trails of moisture tearing down the tall glass. You are the white napkin soaking up the condensation of the history of me. But more than that, you are the liberation of me, the freeing, the possibility of me. You are not the window of which to watch out. You are more. You are the door. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Susan. That was a beautiful reading. I bet your teachers are thrilled to have you in the program. Oh, our last reader is Bonnie Proudfoot, who is it a glassmith? Is that what it's called? What's behind her, she made. We talked about this before everybody joined us today. Bonnie Proudfoot is a proud graduate of Fairmont State University. She received a fellowship for the arts and creative writing from the West Virginia Department of Culture and History and has had fiction and poetry published in the Gettysburg Review, Kestrel, Quarter After 8, and North Appalachia Review, among others. Goshen Road, her first novel, was published by Swallow Press in 2020, and it was selected by the Women's National Book Association as one of their great group reads. The novel was longlisted for the 2021 Penn Hemingway Award for a debut novel. 2 of the chapters first appeared in Kestrel as independent short stories. We are very happy to have you join us today. Thanks again to all of you for a wonderful, eclectic presentation of my excellent taste.
Hi, thanks, Elizabeth and Donna and all the Kestrel folks. I just want to say I so enjoy the aesthetic of this journal and go back to it all the time. I'm so thrilled to be included. And also thanks to Frostburg State for having us. I'm going to read some poems that like skip around in, I think some of them, the ones I'll start out with, look back on earlier parts of my life, and the ones that I'll finish up with are kind of where I'm at right now. So the first one's called What We Did. We stayed up all night on the rooftop where empty bottles of MD 2020 and tubes of airplane model glue spent lined up in piles next to the pigeon coop, with the small arch-shaped windows, the thick splattered drips of shit running down the bricks, the soft sleepy coos and clucks of doves, the breeze that carried clouds of soot, the exhaust of diesel buses and smoking brakes, delivery trucks from the street below, all that rancid waste, somehow sweetened by the must of feathers and warm tar. The only reason was because we could, because our parents were out doing what parents do, because our learning required that we see the world from a different perspective, because the neon sign of the bowling alley down the block and across the street shone alternately pink and green, and because the pre-dawn sky was a dingy brown with the glaze and grit of the streetlights and the eastern star and a sliver of a moon hanging. And on the radio were DM and Ho, and on the TV, Buddhists set themselves ablaze for peace. But for us, it was nothing but spray paint and red brick and plywood, and how good and bad became confused with each other in ways we just couldn't reach or wouldn't have known how to talk about. And we were sunburned and we were moving like an underground army through tunnels beneath buildings and up the stairwells, through the banging steel-hinged door where warm ooze stuck to our naked feet and chunks of glass and brick mixed with feathers. And when we looked toward the east, we could almost see the elevated train, the Jamaica Avenue line, and beyond that, Rockaway, the ocean, and forever. And we could turn the radio up as loud as we wanted. This house of the rising sun, this sun that burned through the distant haze. And we spread dirty sheets on that sullied ground. And after making art, we looked at the sky. So you could probably tell I grew up in an apartment house in Queens. Later found my way to New York. This is another Queens poem. It's called Mimosa. And if any of you guys know what a mimosa is, it's a tree with a kind of a pretty little leaf, tiny little leaf. And also if you touch it, it sort of withdraws and retracts. It's kind of got this touch me not thing going. Okay. Mimosa. Wind blows down the avenue, summer in Queens, everyone's windows open and you can catch the Yankee game from every taxi or idling car at a traffic light. Truck exhaust mixes with asphalt, diesel from buses. The smell says pizza from noon to midnight. But for some reason, in front of my building, something a little rank, like soaked gym socks, the spent flowers from a mimosa, which inconveniently stick onto every parked car's hood, mansard roof, or windshield wipers. Leggy tree, straining toward the sun between buildings, in a small square of dirt cut out of the concrete sidewalk, marked by dogs, backed into by inept parkers, scrawny limbs and naked barkless branches. Back in July, festooned by pink and white flowers like little ruffled parasols in a cocktail, it was as out of place as a movie set prop, a neon beach umbrella without a beach in sight. Oh, Mimosa, if I am ever so lucky to have a tree, I used to think, way before I ever had a tree or drank a mimosa, I would never have one as skanky as a slit thigh prom dress, promising way too much, with touch-me-not leaves that clamped together when brushed or patted, not me. In those days, everything was already impossibly clamped to everything else. I had no idea who I wanted to be, but I know what it felt like, moment by moment, to be surrounded by everything galling. Maybe some other girl looked out over the fire escape while waiting for a GTO to double park with its flashers on, radio blasting, "Can't take my eyes off you." Maybe someone, say my mom, on a neighborhood beautification committee would plant a mimosa and hope the block for 1 month in summer would look like a fairy tale. But now it's almost September. School's back in session. The pennant race is heating up. Across the street, Luigi is dripping sweat and his transom fan blows hot cheese and tomato sauce out onto the block. Poor tree, hungry for light, hungry for a tropical breeze, drops her faded, droopy flowers onto every hubcap and into every storm drain. She can't wait to get away, but she's a little too desperate to show it. Okay, so that's a couple of blasts from the past. Now I'm gonna read a couple more contemporary poems. This one is called Taking Notes. It was inspired by a poem by Ellen Bass called What Did I Love? The format is inspired. The subject is a little different. If you read the Ellen Bass poem, you'll see it's about butchering chickens, which is kind of an interesting thing, but that's not what this poem's about. Taking Notes after Ellen Bass, What Did I Love? After the lights dimmed and the slide projector flashed the underwater archaeology of ancient Greece and Crete, murky Minoan masks of gold or bejeweled swords from shipwrecks off the coast of Spain. Though I fought it, I dozed until the classroom lights came back on. Other times, when the prof had earnest eyebrows or hands that fussed, a cigarette burning to a nub while he talked, ashes falling, I drew it all in my spiral-bound notebooks instead of taking notes. I love how my college notebooks might as well be sketchbooks. Shakespeare prof, poet, fiction writer, especially education profs who droned on about objectives and outcomes, and sometimes other students who maybe had nodded off with their heads resting on their wrists, who didn't glimpse me staring, sketching them. That's why I forgive every student who sleeps during class, and I love the ones who doodle or draw, who possibly never catch any of the concepts I chalk onto blackboards, the diagrams of rising action, climax, denouement, resolution, and after all, these really aren't graphs of the stories I assign. It's my life. Tension rising as papers are due back, miles of red ink needing to be spilled, or faculty break room where dramas are never resolved, union negotiations or teaching evaluations, each episode a little arc, rising or falling action, climax, anticlimax. And when I look out over the classroom to check whether the wisdom I dispense has been sinking in, my eyes are most often caught by the doodlers, the ones who likely begin by placing that little graph onto their paper and then become swept into embellishment. Dots, loops, swirls, lines, or the ones who hide behind the guise of taking notes, but are shading, glancing, shading, drawing me. Those students, the glow bright above their bowed heads, I love them the most. Okay, I'll read a couple more. This is a poem that appeared in Kestrel, also, I think, issue 41. It was written after another poem inspired by another poem too. Alison Luderman's Because These Failures Are My Job. And it goes like this. Apology, April. I wish I could arrive on time, but there is silver in the clouds this morning. The earth seems to move when the wind blows, and the stones on the walk somehow shine. Don't get me wrong. I am grateful for good company and for good solitude. I am grateful for the crab apple that bloomed first in the row. Usually nothing comes that easy. I am always afraid that I will run out of time. Clues abound, but I still have no idea what makes a mushroom rise from the leaf-strewn ground. I can't even find that pocket knife I let slip. Now each old tool has more weight. I am grateful for the way deer travel the woods across steep hillsides, their toe prints and footholds. It is the dampness of this valley, the warmth in sudden pockets of air. These bones the dog has dragged into the yard, how they remind me of last winter's trees. Thanks. Are we out of time? Or should I read one more?
Well, you're welcome to read one more, and then I'll moderate some questions or remarks out of the chat.
Okay, here's one more poem that was brand new poem that was inspired by a James Wright poem, Lying in a Hammock at William Duffy's Farm in Pine Island, Minnesota. Who doesn't love that poem? Although I'm not lying in a hammock. It's called Perseids, and that's a meteor shower that happens in August. Perseids, tonight the stars keep their distance. We stretch our necks on our backs in the bed of the pickup. We curse the haze, the clouds, the moon spotlighting the night sky too bright. Out in the field, horses snort, crickets grind the minutes away. My son's breath slows down. He is warm in my arms. At the creek, a bullfrog twangs like a banjo. It starts. David says, whoa. He sees one flash past, but I was watching a bat shoot out toward the moon, circle back. We are surrounded by everything night, everything softly glowing. A cloud stipples the moon, dapples into patches. David sees the next one too. I see the top of the ridge, medium gray, the black cutout shapes of trees, silver mist on the hilltops, soft as smoke. We are low in the bowl of the sky. Slow clouds flow. David sees the third meteor streaking earthward, but a whippoorwill calls and calls. I have been waiting all my life to rise. So, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. And thanks again to all of you. I hope you have lots of questions and comments in the YouTube stream, which I can't see. I don't think you all can either. But it's not just us watching you. You have a bigger audience than Zoom will let you know. So, Jen, thank you. I'll turn the room back over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Elizabeth. And thank you for your excellent taste, right, as represented by these readings. So certainly, let me just make this remark that there are lots of well-justified, enthusiastic bits of praise for each of you in the YouTube chat, which will be visible to you on the archived copy of the video of this reading. So you can go back at any time to the YouTube link and see those remarks. But let me just pull a few out for you. So of Kevin, there was a remark from Sally Rosenkindred. I love the surprising images, the leaps and surprises in Kevin's poems kept me off guard in the best way. And she also wrote for Robert, great reading, Robert. Those Mothman poems are so inventive. And man, I love those Mothman poems too. Let's see. Great job, Susan. Great reading, Susan. Love that last poem, that lyric momentum. And let's see, Stanley Patrick, still thinking about the glow above their heads. And this is obviously for Bonnie. Sally, we're low in the bowl of the sky, right? Quoting those great lines. Lovely poems, Bonnie. And there was a question, Bonnie, how long did you come from West Virginia? Or how did you come to West Virginia from New York? Sorry that it's not a writing related question.
I fell into it. I fell in love with a fellow whose family lived in West Virginia, and we met in Buffalo, New York at college. And we went down to visit his family right at that time in April when all the dogwoods are flowering on the sides of the hills, and red buds and beautiful colors, and everything was greening up, and I was hooked. And so we eventually wound up moving down and homesteading, and I attended Fairmont State and got a teaching degree and stayed, And I came to Ohio in 1996 for a PhD in creative writing, so I hopped across the Ohio River, but stayed in West Virginia for a good long time. But I'm a Queens girl.
Bonnie, there was a remark too in the chat from Jerry LaFemina. Some New York City subway images always bring a smile to my face. Well, and it appears that we are, that was our question. So because we are at a kind of a reasonable stopping point, thank you all again so much for your time and your reading and your incredible lines. And thank you for being with us for this 15th annual Indie Lit Fest. We hope we can actually get you to Frostburg maybe next year. But thanks again for your time. And Elizabeth, thank you for bringing, well, Elizabeth and Donna, I apologize, I've left Donna off, bringing these works to us for this reading. So
thank you. Next year we'll have a glass of wine together after.
I hope so.
Or 4.
Oh, yes. Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye.
Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you again.
Thank you.